Hello and welcome to our back to school webinar hosted by Planner Consulting. So first off, real quick, a little bit more about Planner Consulting. We're an international youth-led nonprofit organization striving to spread mental health awareness and creating open communication about mental illnesses. So our primary goal is to provide free consultations for youth and teens in academics, college admissions, and lifestyle and mental health. So today we have an amazing group of panelists. First off, I would like to thank you all for coming out today. And we're gonna go ahead and go through and introduce everybody first. So first off, we have Ria from the Young Writers Initiative. And she is a student representing student body in this webinar. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm a rising senior based in Texas, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Young Writers Initiative, which is another student-led organization as well. But I also am an enthusiast about a lot of things. I like to write, I'm a blogger, I do a lot of things at school, so I have my fair share of time management struggles, and juggling all that with the college process is hectic, but I've garnered some tips along the way that I think would be helpful for some people. So I hope that you guys enjoy the panel, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, awesome. And then we have Dr. Julie Groveman, who is a psychologist. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you today. I'm Dr. Julie. I am a licensed psychologist practicing in New York, but I'm mainly remote virtual right now. I work with people who struggle with anxiety, depression, relationship concerns. My specialty is helping people to build self-esteem and to work through different fears, social fears that you're struggling with. So during this time, it's completely normal to have fears, and that's what I'm really looking forward to chatting with you about. I'm happy to be here.
And then we have Dr. Shribosthi from Mind Aid Therapists.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I'm the co-founder of Mind Aid Therapists. We are an online counseling and therapy portal. We're based in India, so we cater to the Indian clients. And I'm currently practicing in Oman. I'm Bangladeshi as well. So I believe that as Mind Therapists, we do cater to a lot of cultures and a lot of people going through, and kids going through a lot of things. So I hope I can add to this amazing panel today. I really hope I can add to this. So thank you so much for inviting us.
Of course, yeah, glad to have you here. And then we have Miss Lauren, who's a music teacher.
Almost forgot to unmute myself. Yes, I'm Lauren Marcinkowski. It's quite a mouthful of a last name. It was not my given name. It's my married name. I am a music educator. I'm also a music therapist, board certified music therapist. I got my master's in education. And I work with students through kindergarten through senior year of high school as a music educator and a music therapist in the county I live in Pennsylvania. And I work in a lot of alternative settings, and I also, which means I go to places such as like psychiatric hospitals, and that's where I teach music classes because those kids still need credits and they still need music class while they're there. So it's a really fun job and it's very rewarding, and I hope that I can also give something to this panel as well. I know everyone here seems very qualified, and I'm hoping to learn from you all as well.
Amazing. That's really great to hear that you do that. That's really cool. And then finally we have Dana, who is a high school English teacher based in Toronto. If you would like to introduce.
Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here today. This is a topic that I'm very curious about as an educator, especially because as adults, I think a lot of us already have our coping mechanisms pretty down solid. So I think a lot of the times the advice that we offer may not be advice that is reachable for students. So I'm so glad to be here today with students as well as psychologists and other teachers as well. I am a high school teacher. I teach English, and I also have qualifications in special education and behavioral management. Even as a high school teacher, the subject that I'm in, I find a lot of times, even though it's just English, because people are expressing and writing about their thoughts and their emotions, you do touch on mental health a lot. So I'm really excited to be here today and learn from everyone and hear your input.
Awesome. Really cool. Thank you all again for being here. We really appreciate it. Also, just some general guidelines for all the participants. This will be a recorded session, so unless you would like your face on YouTube, it's totally up to you whether you want to be on mute or turn your camera off. If you do have background noises going on, definitely be on mute though. And yeah, just feel free to drop anything you'd like to say in the chat, and I'm going to hand it over to Jenny, our lovely community director, who will be moderating the chat and asking the questions in today's panel. So thank y'all.
Okay, so first off, for our audience members, if you have any questions for our speakers at any point during this webinar, feel free to leave them in the chat. So our first question for you is, what are your best tips for time management? And how would you recommend someone to properly spend their time when there's always the constant distraction caused by social media or anything else?
Are we supposed to just start, or are you like it's a question for everybody? Yeah, anyone can answer.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just start. The first thing I want to tell you is that do understand this is a pandemic, right? So it's not a normal vacation. It's not like everything is fine and we just carrying on. It's not like that. So it's pandemic, and it is having an immense impact on people, on their mental health as well. So time as we knew it before is very different from how it is right now. Back in the day, we had outside environment, the environment outside would cater to our day. For example, you knew that you had to wake up, you had to go to school, you have to catch a train, you have to have your breakfast. You had a lot of these things which you don't have anymore. So time itself as a notion has changed. We don't know what time we wake up, what time we sleep. This is why time management is so much more important today. So one of the things that you could do is, first of all, plan out what are the things you need to achieve in your week, and then you divide them according to your day. So today I cannot, like for say today's Sunday, I'm not going to accomplish like say 10 things. Keep it below 7, because we are humans. We're going to procrastinate the minute we see that there are so many things to accomplish. So keep it below 7 and you divide them according to the time. As human beings, we tend to underestimate how much time a task is going to take. So I might look at an essay and be like, this is going to take me 15 minutes. And then it turns out it takes me 45 minutes, right? That's what happens. So overestimate time, give it a lot more time than you actually think it requires, so that when you do achieve it and you can finish it off quickly, you get a sense of achievement. So that's one important point, is overestimate your time. Another thing is tailor it. Don't go according to what your friends are comfortable with. You know, there are a lot of people who are great at waking up early in the morning and then they're doing all their tasks in the day and they're done. So don't try to compete with that. Understand your personality and what is fine for you. So if you are the kind who is someone who's so much more productive in the afternoon, keep your tough tasks and the important notes or the important subjects that are difficult, keep that in the afternoon, because you're so much more fresh at that point. So tailor your routine according to your personality. That's the second one. And third one that I would just like to add is, the minute we start looking at any sort of task as a chore, or oh my god, this is going to take a lot of time, we're going to procrastinate on it. So maybe kind of shift your mindset on it and look at it more like, this is a normal part of the day. It's like waking up and brushing your teeth. It's, you know, it's something that you have to do. It's not something that you need to focus on, because the second you flip your thought process and look at it as something normal, you're more bound to actually do it than procrastinate and push it for later. These are like few points that I would like to add.
I wanted to add, I love your points that you just shared. I wanted to add for things that are really hard to do, we procrastinate sometimes because something's a little overwhelming. We're not trying to put something off, but just feeling overwhelmed by a big task can make you not want to do it. So it really helps sometimes with any goal that you're setting for yourself to break it into smaller pieces, so that if something does seem like it's tough and you're not really sure why you're not doing it, you could try to break it down into 3 mini tasks that you could do piece by piece, so that will help you to follow through with it. And then the other thing I wanted to add about social media, I think we could all agree that it can be addicting at some point. You can just be on your phone for too long and not even really realize all your time is kind of being eaten up. So really ask yourself if the social media is it helping you? How do you feel when you're on social media? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling sad? Are you comparing yourself a lot? I know as adults, it affects us too. I think being on our phone, comparing ourselves to everybody and what they're doing. And I think just echoing what was just said, that this time is not normal. This is a really hard time for a lot of people. And so when you're on your phone first thing in the morning or before you go to sleep and you're looking at what everybody else is doing, it's really understandable to not feel so great about yourself. So I just want to encourage you to ask yourself if it's actually helping you to be on your phone that much. And if it's not, maybe limit that time, because that time is very precious right now too, how you're spending it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And some things I do as like some things I do as a student, like especially applications wise, is I have time limits on my phone. So I have Apple, and so I set like a 35-minute limit on my Instagram, right? And so whenever I hit that, I might say, okay, whatever, bypass that limit, but I'm aware of how much time I'm spending on Instagram. And so slowly, as you kind of see that more and more, then you're like, I'm kind of spending a lot of time on Instagram. And then you start weaning off that a little bit, right? Another thing I use is Forest. Forest is my #1 time management productivity app. It's this little app right here. And it's like you plan whenever you're on like deep focus mode, you're like planting virtual like flowers and like seeds and whatever it is, right? And this garden. And you time yourself like 25 minutes. You have like to grow this plant. And then if you put yourself in deep focus mode, whenever you leave this app or go on social media, it kills the plant. And so it's kind of like an external motivator. I guess if that helps you, it helps me because it makes me like, oh, I want to grow this beautiful garden. So I don't want that plant to perish because I went on social media. And so that kind of, when you start getting in that zone, it really cooks you in. A thing I noticed is there's this 5-second rule, right? The hardest part of doing something is starting it. And so when I'm either writing or when I'm doing my homework, I just like, I don't want to start this. This is like the last thing I want to do right now. But once you start it and like do it for like 5 minutes, then you start getting into that flow, and then it's kind of difficult to stop, at least for me. And so when you start getting that flow and that deep focus, you'll surprise yourself with how much you're able to accomplish just because of those things you put in time. And then finally, I have this thing called the Pomodoro Technique. You can find it online. And basically, you time yourself for 25 minutes for like deep focus. And then you give yourself either a 5-minute or a 10-minute break. And so these are periodically, you're giving yourself deep focus moments, but also giving yourself necessary brain breaks. And this is a really good sustainable way to actually manage your time and get things accomplished.
Another thing I'd like to add to this is that we need to understand our brain. The more we resist something, the more it persists. So the more I'm going to run away from social media, I am going to find a way to it. So assign a period in your day for social media so that at that moment you can be on Instagram without any guilt and actually do what you want to. So assign that so that even when you're doing your homework or whatever task you have to, you can remind yourself, all right, I have so-and-so period for my social media. I'm going to finish this so I can do that. So assign a little period for that. And I like the Pomodoro technique because that works on a lot of students. That's actually a fantastic one.
The app that you mentioned as well, where you actually can visualize a forest growing. I think that's really good because it kind of challenges another fundamental aspect of our brain, especially as a teenager. You tend to overthink the reward of a task rather than the consequences. And this is something that you actually age out of as you get older. So I think as teenagers, a lot of times, there is that reward that is very motivating without the recognition of the consequences. So that app that you mentioned is actually amazing because you can physically see the consequence. Maybe not the immediate consequence on your work, but at least a consequence of your forest dying. So that's a really great tool. Thanks for sharing that.
I wanted to add, Ria, if you could put the app in the chat so people could see it, because I think that's really cool. And I also have a sister who's a teenager. She's 13 years younger than me, so she, I think, would really benefit from that. And I wanted to kind of piggyback with everybody. I'll make it short, but I don't know about everyone's home situations. They're all very different. But I think that you should really give yourself grace and give yourself leeway for things to happen at home that may interrupt your flow, may interrupt you during your school day or when you're studying, may interrupt you when you're doing things that you're trying to be productive on, and to give yourself like that, okay, this can happen. It's really unprecedented time. Like everyone's been saying, it's not a normal time. So I know at my parents' house, my sister who's a teenager was trying to learn at home, and I have an adult brother and an uncle that both have autism, and they live with my parents. So she had lots of interruptions, and it was frustrating for her. And I'm sure if you have younger siblings or if you have people coming in and out of your house, just to give yourself that like break sometimes if you can't accomplish everything. And I think that what some of the other speakers had said, if you break things into smaller tasks and to smaller time limits, it might not feel as frustrating as if you procrastinated and left a 5-page paper the night before, you know? So if you break it up into the smaller tasks, you can, you know, handle those interruptions a little bit better, especially if you're learning from home, which I know a lot of students are this fall.
Does anyone else have anything else to add? Or do you want to move on to the next question? Okay. So how would you recommend someone to get back into their routine after a long summer in lockdown? And also, what are some important things to incorporate into your schedule? For example, like exercise or breaks or anything else? And what tools would you recommend to get more organized?
So I started resetting my schedule back in like June because I'm an early bird, but like I don't know why, but the beginning of quarantine just like flipped me. And so I was like staying up until like 2 p.m. and waking up at like 9. That was like really weird for me. And then so naturally my body kind of came back into my normal circadian rhythm, and then I started waking up at 7 and then going to sleep at like 10. But either way, I think it's really important to set yourself times to go to sleep and times to wake up, because the more inconsistent that is, that like the more your mental health will be affected, the more tired you'll be in the day, and the more out of balance you'll be. So like have like okay, I'm gonna wake up at 7 a.m. this morning and I'm gonna go to sleep at 10 or 12, whatever works for you. And when you get in that kind of pattern, you start getting that schedule back into normal again. And so yeah, that's my tip for that.
I'd like to add to Ria about her sleep cycle. Sleep cycle is extremely important. We need to understand what happens in our brain with sleep. The better you sleep, the lesser your stress is. And especially when you're in school, you're facing stress throughout the year. There is no break. Even during pandemic, you're going through your stress period. So the better you sleep, the lesser your stress. Plus, your neural connections, they get stronger. So whatever you studied before, the day after, you're going to remember it better. Even if you say, for example, you tried driving, say you're learning how to drive a day before, sleep over it, and then the next day you see you're actually better at handling your reflexes. This is why your sleep is important. And during pandemic, something that everyone has experienced is your sleep cycle is haywire. Everybody all over the world, they're sleeping at another time, they're waking up at another time. So getting back to that routine is extremely hard. And it's something we need to understand and accept that is going to take us some time. So how do you get the sleep cycle back? A, your morning routine and your night routine. Your routine before you go to sleep is extremely important. What are the activities you're doing so that you calm yourself down and you actually get that sleep? So look into that routine you have. I have some points that I can add as to what to do with your routine in general. Start small. Don't expect your life to be just as it was before pandemic, because before pandemic we all were in a rush, everyone's competing all over the world. You can't do that anymore. Things have changed, the rules have changed, and it's going to take us time as humans to understand what to expect from this world and how to actually go back into that rhythm. So start small, don't plan grand events, plan tiny things in your day. Second, like we spoke in our first question, was structure your day. Focus on what you can control and ignore what you cannot control, because there's so much as mere mortals we can't do right now. So just focus on getting through the day to day. Third is expect yourself and your body to feel tired. A lot of people experiencing this, that now that they're going back to work, they get exhausted. Even though the percentage of their work right now, say 2% compared to before, they're really tired because our body is used to this. For the last 4-5 months, we're used to being at home, we're used to being in those four corners. So expect this, which is why it's more important to remember to not have too many activities in your day, since your body cannot cope up with it. Give it some time. When you were talking about exercise, there are two kinds. There is your mental and your physical exercise. We have to understand that when you were in school, you had like 6-7 hours worth of mental exercise happening. You're calculating, you're interacting, you have a lot of mechanism happening. So all of that has been replaced. Now that you don't have that. So start incorporating that sort of mental exercise. Even when you're socializing with your friends, that itself has an interaction happening. That itself is a math equation happening in your brain. So start incorporating your mental exercise in small manners, as well as your physical. Now, even for somebody who was not into working out before, think about it. You're going from one class to another. You're going upstairs, downstairs. You're moving around. You're walking to school. You are incorporating other forms of exercise which you're not aware of. Unconsciously it's happening. So now that you're at home and you're studying online, you do not have that, which is why you have to make a conscious effort to actually incorporate some form of exercise. Doesn't have to be lifting weights, doesn't have to be something really intense, nothing overwhelming. It's all right. Anything as simple as, for example, stretching, or maybe even walking around your compound. Anything, even for 10 minutes, just to awaken the entire body again. So exercise in those two ways. One thing I'm sure everyone has noticed during this pandemic is this entire habit of baking and painting and reading and dancing. I don't know how is it in your part of the world. In my part of the world, everybody's into baking. Has that happened with you all? Yeah. So these are really lovely things that we started incorporating during pandemic. Nobody had time for all of this. And what that has done is, what everyone has noticed, it's calmed people down. It's a form of distraction that we are missing during this pandemic. So keep that, incorporate that even in this period where you are again reestablishing your connections with the world. Incorporate those because they calm you down. So when you're again back in that race, you're able to use something to ground you. So again, keep these sort of activities. And I think with that, I'm done. So yeah, these are my points.
I wanted to say something about the exercise because it's so important, but at the same time, if you're tired, we don't want to do what we know would actually help. So for example, if you're really tired and you want to take a nap, one way, sometimes what we actually need isn't what our body wants to do. So if you are tired in the middle of the day and you had enough sleep, I think this idea of taking a walk where you're able to actually wake your body up a little bit, you might feel better after you do that, even if you really don't feel like doing it. And really try to notice what helps you feel better and do more of that. That's something that really helps with feeling tired, feeling like that lazy feeling when we're so relaxed and just want to stay in bed. If it's taking a shower first thing in the morning, if it's getting dressed first thing in the morning, you know, if you're home a lot, you're in comfy clothes and that's cozy, but it's not necessarily the thing that's going to get you ready for whatever you have to do that day. So having, you know, a routine with what you're going to wear in the morning, or showering in the morning, or whatever is going to get you going, and taking that morning walk or afternoon walk to wake you up can be helpful.
I think the baking thing was kind of funny because I was an avid baker before quarantine. Like I would bake cookies and I don't know, all these kinds of things. And then when quarantine hit, for some reason I stopped baking. And I think it's the way that the way my brain is wired is I love being busy and I love having that strict, like, school's at this time and extracurriculars, and then I have to do homework here and I have so much to do, but I want to fit something else in, right? And so getting back into that like schedule of, I guess, giving myself so much to do so that I can enjoy those small things. I don't know why that is. Maybe one of the professionals can answer why I'm like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Just to add two things, because you guys have kind of touched on what I think is most important as well, which is definitely sleep, as well as breaking down your tasks into realistic goals for the day. In addition to that, a little body hack that I used to use when I was traveling a lot and switching time zones, it's kind of like your body switching the hour in which you wake up. So what I would always do if I was in a new time zone is when I'd wake up, I would find a source of light, and I would just try to stare at the light for a bit to signal to my body that I'm awake, and then also to eat something like a piece of fruit immediately after that. That was always helpful with jet lag. And then also with scheduling your day, I think in addition to scheduling your day-to-day tasks, having long-term plans help as well, especially with procrastination. I know when I was a teenager, I used to procrastinate a lot. So I think having long-term planning really helped convince myself that this isn't something that I can do tomorrow. And if I have to do it tomorrow, I also have 6 other tasks that I need to do. So finding, you know, instead of just putting like a to-do list in your phone, actually finding an app or a calendar where you can plan your week or even plan your month can be really helpful with that.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I mean, planners. Like I got a planner yesterday because I'm a planner hack, and so I just, even though I might not use them, like having something physical is really helpful, and it should be something that you love, because if you're not like aesthetically inclined to this planner, then you're gonna be like, I don't want to use it. But when I saw this planner, I was like, oh my god, I have to have it. Like it's everything I want in a planner. And so like find a planner you like think you cannot live without, and then like stick by that, and then it'll be fun to plan your day, which is not usually fun.
I love using a planner. I always write everything down. I always feel like silly because some people think that's really outdated, but I agree. If you don't write it down, and actually in handwriting, sometimes if something happens to your phone and you're so used to just writing things in your phone, helps to have it in another place so that you'll be able to remember what you need to do.
Okay, so our third question is, what are your tips to help someone maintain good mental health during COVID-19? And why is mental health important, especially right now and during school time?
I can start with this one. So just want to like normalize and humanize that it would be very unusual if you were having a breeze during this time and you were just coping perfectly fine. I think this is a time where we're all adjusting, and it's an ongoing adjustment period. And I like to look at struggles as really big opportunities for growth. I know myself, the times that I've really had obstacles in my life, or I've struggled, is when I really learn the most about myself. And like, you don't realize that in the moment. Like right now, we might not see that, but we will look back and say, wow, I really grew through this time, or I learned something about myself. So just want to encourage you to think about, to zoom out a little bit, that right now this is totally normal to be having a hard time. And also you're really growing in ways that you don't even realize. And you're going out of your comfort zone in ways that is really going to help you to become a well-rounded person later on. So I think, keeping a journal right now could be really powerful. I know we have a writing teacher here who could tell you more about why it's so important to write. But for myself, I know that I encourage a lot of the people I work with to try to process feelings, to write out what's going on in your mind, because we're all having thoughts, we're all having feelings, and later on you'll be able to make more sense of it if you have like a healthy outlet. If writing isn't your thing, maybe it's cooking, painting, doing art, maybe it's chatting with your friends about how hard this is or how crazy this time is, because it really is sometimes just totally different than anything we've been through before. So I think just not isolating is the number one thing, not bottling up your feelings and just keeping it all to yourself, because when we hold things in for too long, sometimes that can result in things that we regret later on and can really have negative effects. So really making sure you're not keeping all of this to yourself and that you're able to seek the support that you need if you do need that.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that as well. Just really quick, the thing I think the most important, well, one of the most important things for me is to check in frequently with myself. Like Julie was saying, like if you can write your emotions down and how you're feeling at the end of the day or throughout the day, that's great. But even if you can just take 5 minutes, if you feel an emotion coming on, if you feel like so something is off with you, kind of check in and say, okay, what's causing this emotion? Why am I starting to feel this way? I think that's really important, and it's actually a really hard thing to learn to do, and it's going to take practice. But if you're someone like me, I'll go all day and I'll think I'm fine, and then at the end of the day, I'll feel like exhausted or sad, and I'm like, well, why do I feel this way? And I had to go back and find out what caused that. So if you can, in the moment, realize maybe you fidget a little more when you're nervous, maybe you have like a little nervous habit, and maybe that's because you're upset, or maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. When you notice you're doing that, or if you feel your emotions kind of changing, check in with yourself. And if you can give yourself, an opportunity to calm down or do an activity that you enjoy, maybe try to fit that in your day if you can't do it in the moment, to kind of help alleviate some of those emotions.
And also check in with your friends, because I've on quarantine, I've called at least one friend a day. And I'm a caller, so that's how I communicate. But I like just calling people and talking to them and just vibing, even if it's you're not doing anything, just doing just being in kind of human contact outside of your family has helped me a lot in adjusting and has made the transition a little more difficult, especially as a senior. I know as a senior it can be really disappointing, because our whole lives have been leading up to this moment where we're senior year, and then we have all these cool things planned, and then bam, we can't do it anymore. But I think the way we can combat that is still connecting people and reminding ourselves that, yeah, it might not be the best situations, but our life doesn't end here. Senior year is not going to be the year that is the pinnacle of our life. And so there's going to be a lot more opportunities to live and have fun and stuff like that. So just make the most out of the time we have.
I'd like to add to this this topic, that why is mental health important now? The thing is, mental health was always important. It's crucial right now. I'd like to add to Julie's point. People are going through a lot of changes. There's a lot of crisis. People are losing their jobs, moving, or not even knowing that, okay, tomorrow, where am I going to get my food from? There are so many things happening in this world. So even people who have never addressed mental health issues are talking about anxiety and depression today. This is why mental health is supremely important. And why is it important in school? Because your school hasn't stopped. You have your exams, you have your submissions, you have to turn up no matter what. The difference is you don't get to physically be there. Even having friends in your school building actually helps your mental health. You don't get to do that. So Ria was saying that she talks to every friend, one friend a day at least, right? That's the most we can do at this moment. But somewhere along, we do miss that physical presence of a friend, and that adds to our mental health situation right now. This is why mental health issue is important and we need to talk about it. So what can you do to deal with your mental health, at least to help yourself feel a little better? First thing, adding to their points, identify your thought process at this point. There are a lot of thought errors that happen. For example, if I'm feeling anxious, I might feel like I'm doomed. My life's going to end. I'm going to never meet my friends. Everything is going to change. Things will never be the same. You know how you spiral in your thought process that in the future things are going to be bad? This is also known as fortune telling. So as humans, actually when you think about it, we don't know what's in the future, right? None of us have that power to predict what's going to happen in the future. So this, we have to identify, understand that this is not going to help us today, and avoid that thought process. Another thing, maybe find peace in the fact that the entire world is suffering. You know, we're not alone. At the end of the day, everybody, it's not just one city that has been affected, it's the entire world. And somewhere along, that helps you feel that you're not alone. And maybe concentrate on that when everything gets a bit too overwhelming. And whenever you're feeling anxious or you're feeling low or anything like that, understand this is an emotion. It's there. It's not a fact. It's going to pass because you are human. You're going to feel so many things, right? So allow that emotion, feel it, allow it to happen, and then let it pass on. Do not act on it because it's just temporary, and have faith that you're going to get out of it. These are few points that I feel, at least on a daily basis, if you can practice it, it becomes a reflex and you will be able to incorporate this into your daily functioning.
I wanted to add one. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Really quick. I know when I was a teenager, I was never aware of how I was feeling half the time. If someone were to ask me, I don't even think I'd be able to label my emotion or know. And I know I was a very anxious teenager, so I had tons of, feelings, but I never really could label it. So what are the signs that you might be struggling, like to check in with yourself, like Lauren said, some ways to look at it? Like, are you not really wanting to talk to your friends that much and you're normally pretty social? I know that's something I'm hearing a lot, that maybe you just are tired of having to, you're tired, you're not your normal self. And I think that's really normal right now, that you're, and that's kind of a warning sign, but it's happening to a lot of people. The other thing is, are you noticing that you're eating more than normal or not eating as much? Are you having thoughts that are not like yourself? Kind of to check in with yourself and know, are there warning signs? And I'm telling you, it's a huge sign to be able to realize when you do need a little bit more support right now, even if it feels like you don't want to admit it and it's scary, just like we were talking about. Asking for help is not something people feel comfortable doing for a lot of reasons, but I'm telling you, it's a very big sign of strength if you realize you do need a little more support, because we're all human, we all go through struggles. And so notice those little signs and talk to someone about it if you need to.
I was really looking forward to discussing this question, because I think that, we've heard so many times this era has been described as unprecedented, and I can only imagine what teenagers are going through, because it's such an important time in your life. So just kind of to piggyback on what Julie and Lauren were saying about like recognizing what you're going through, what you're feeling, and really reaching out to someone to speak about these things. I know it can be very vulnerable. It can feel very frightening to do that. And sometimes we may do that and we may not even get the results that we want based on who we're reaching out to. Just make sure that you're not giving up and really finding the support that you need. I know that adults may not be experiencing the same things that teenagers are experiencing right now, but what we do have is a lot of insight as to, what may be going on, what those emotions may be signs of. So in addition to that, Dr. Julie, I really loved your point about how this is, how going through something difficult is really an opportunity for growth. For the teenagers that are listening in today, if you are struggling right now and if you are finding yourself in a depression, I promise you that this is an extraordinary time for growth, and you will look back on this period in your life and realize that you learned a lot about yourself, and you will learn skills, if it's empathy or even just being able to recognize those signs in someone else. It may not feel like it, but it is in a way a very valuable experience to experience these human emotions.
Okay, so our next question is a bit more specific towards teachers, but anyone can still feel free to join in. How would you recommend studying during school with COVID-19? And what are the best online resources to study, as well as what is the best way to study, especially if you are learning from home instead of attending school?
I don't know, Dana, do you want to go first? Since I can add some things, but you teach a core subject, so if you want to add first.
Sure, yeah, I can start on this one. So the first thing I think is creating a space for yourself where you're comfortable to work. It kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but even myself as a teacher, it's taken me about 3 or 4 months to just finally accept the fact that I need to set up a proper desk, because I had been working in, my kitchen table and on my bed, and I'm really feeling the effects in my body. I understand that not everyone has access to, a desk or a proper chair, but even like right now I have my laptop propped up on top of a suitcase on top of my bed, which helps a lot with my back. I'm not leaning over my computer, and that's really going to help with your physical well-being. Another thing are blue light glasses. There are a lot of trendy blue light glasses out there, but you can order a pair online for a very affordable price. They're only about $10, especially with our times kind of changing, and maybe some of us are working later than we normally do. Staring at the light really does have an impact on your sleep. And as a lot of us have addressed today, sleep is so important. In terms of resources for studying at home, there are a lot of great online applications. I think that if there are opportunities to take yourself away from the screen to study the content, that's also great. So even though you can make flashcards online, if you have paper, it wouldn't hurt to maybe make some flashcards on paper so that you can have a little bit of time to disconnect. And that will also help the content sort of sit a little better, because it's not going to be a repetitive experience like a lot of your experiences on the screen are going to be. And then finally, just, paying attention to your learning style. So if you don't know what your learning style is, you can kind of just think back to lessons that have really resonated with you, or environments where you feel like you're learning the most. With online learning, a lot of the learning that we're doing is probably through reading on the screen. But if you're a visual learner, or if you pay more attention to audio, you can try to search on YouTube to find things to cater to that. If you're more of a kinetic learner, you can maybe try to find a podcast on the subject that you're studying, and maybe go for a walk while you listen to the content. And if you're having any trouble with locating these resources, definitely speak to your teachers, and your teachers will be able to help you with that.
Going right off of what Dana said, like the last point, those were amazing points, by the way. But going right off of what she said, the last point, please don't feel bad or worry about reaching out to your teacher. I don't know one teacher who, throughout this whole pandemic, through virtual teaching, wouldn't want their students to reach out to them if they were struggling. In fact, I know that other teachers are trying to reach out more to students who aren't interacting. And if you were one of those students who couldn't log on every day or didn't get your assignments in, don't think that your teachers were upset or like holding grudges against you, because they weren't. They were probably just very concerned and very understanding that it was such, I don't want to say unprecedented because we keep saying that word, but it had never happened before. So I feel like a lot of teachers were really understanding, and maybe you didn't have that experience, and I'm sorry if you didn't, but I think the majority of teachers would be understanding. If you miss assignments, just communicate. Communication is so important. Email teachers, I'm having trouble with this assignment. I didn't complete this assignment. I'm having trouble with this concept. They will do their best to meet you where you are and try to help you learn. Another point that I think is very important is setting time limits for yourself. I know so many people who would wake up at 2 o'clock because they didn't have live lessons this past spring, and they do their homework till 11 o'clock at night. and that's not a really healthy routine to get into, especially if you're working at odd hours or you're not setting limits for yourself. Set a limit when you start and when you end, and try to make it during a normal school hours, so that if eventually we are not virtual this school year and we end up going back to school, it's not so jarring to your system. And I really like what Dana said, to try to get off your computer if you can for study tips. If not, I'm sure you're aware of Khan Academy and Spark Notes and other websites like that that can help you studying, offer study guides as well. But, you know, maybe reach out to your teacher and say, hey, I would like to have less computer time. Can you give me some ideas to study offline, or can you give me a book that I could study from instead? So those are just things I would add. I am a music teacher, so I'm not sure how the core subjects go, but, you know, I think going off of music though, if you're really into your gym class, if you love music class or art class, try to reach out to those teachers and see if you can still do almost extracurriculars or have extra assignments or extra projects, because we don't have art club or choir after school anymore. Maybe they're holding those still in their virtual, or they have like an asynchronous thing set up, like assignments that you can do. So try to do those as well, especially if you're really passionate about them. That'll help with the mental health component of everything.
Adding to Dana, I'd like to add about space. So I remember, Lauren, you were talking about how your sister's moved in and now she's not able to concentrate like before because of your uncle and all of that, right? So around the world, a lot of kids, a lot of students are undergoing this problem where you have, say, 2-3 family members in one room. So it's very difficult to actually manage to have a space for yourself. So what do you do in those sort of situations? Even if you have no space, say you have a wall, a tiny corner of the wall that you can just clear out and maybe creatively turn it into yours. So you put up your own quotes, or you put up your timetable or anything, so that you feel like this belongs to you, and make that your space. No matter how bad the situation is, at least you feel like, okay, I can study right now. So that is about the space. And another thing is, again, if you have a lot of people in your room, in the house, a lot of distraction, find ways to tune out this distraction. So you can use music. A lot of kids enjoy listening to music while studying, but remember that music which has lyrics, that's a problem, because you get distracted, right? So try to get instrumental music. I'm sure, Lauren, you can add to this because of music. You can, if you listen to, for example, jazz or piano, in fact, YouTube will have a lot of music that caters to studying or working or focus or concentration. So maybe you can listen to that and be able to focus on what you're trying to study. Even when we are at home, even as adults, we get bored. It's really common to get bored. So what are the techniques that you could incorporate into your daily life? One thing, like Ria had mentioned, using Pomodoro Technique. I'll just explain in case anyone doesn't know what is a Pomodoro Technique. You work for 25 minutes, you take a 5 minutes break, you do that 4 times, and then you take a longer break. So at least if you have a big task to do, you work for 25 minutes and you feel like, okay, I've at least done 1/4 of the task. It gives you the sense of achievement. So Pomodoro Technique really works here if you are feeling like you cannot work. Another thing you can use is using momentum. So what happens there is, suppose you're doing something really interesting, it's fun, it's nice. Directly switch to a task that can be a little tedious or boring. So your entire drive and that energy can be shifted to this boring task, and you actually end up finishing that. You can try that as well. And talking about resources for studying, you have resources like Go Conquer or Quizlet, which they use a lot of flashcards. You can actually make your flashcards, and then you'll get questions about your topic. So you can try these out. If you want, I'll put it up in the chat box so that everyone can access it. And there's one which is very interesting that I found. It's called Study Blue, where you collaborate with different students. They set you up with people who have similar subjects and similar syllabus, and you can actually interact and have like a group study. And this is known as Study Blue. That also I'll put up in the chat box, and maybe that can be a little fun thing to do during quarantine.
So before we move on to our next question, we're getting close to our Q&A session. So for all attendees, if you can start putting any questions you have in the chat. So our fifth question is, how can students continue their extracurriculars while making a difference in their community during this pandemic?
I think virtual extracurriculars are, I mean, the only thing we can really do that right now. But I'm part of a lot of clubs and I lead a lot of clubs, and you can be surprised how innovative you and your team can get as long as you put your heads together. Like I run a South Asian club at my school, and we wanted to do like a chai social where we kind of made everyone chai, and then we just talked about stuff and everything. But obviously we can't do that. So instead we're like doing like finding different ways to do that, like either delivering people their own like little chai packets or just having people make their own tea, but whatever it is. So there's always a way that you can adapt. Obviously there are some things that are going to be a bit more difficult to adapt to, but instead of thinking about this as like a bad thing, think about it as a challenge. Think about it to be like, how innovative can I be and how creative can I be to accomplish this thing? And you'll surprise yourself. And then when you think of something that's creative, innovative, you'll be like, oh, wow, I guess I am like, some like, I guess, very creative person. And then you'll start feeling better, and then it'll kind of take on a world of its own. And then you'll kind of feel proud of yourself when you're like, in these circumstances, we're still doing this and this. And even if you play a sport and those extracurriculars can't continue, there are always different ways that you can keep yourself motivated and maybe engage your community. Like maybe, I don't know anything with sports, but like there's always something you can do, right? So if you really feel like you're antsy and you want to do something, just try to be like as creative as you can and get people's ideas together.
I love that idea of starting something, and it might push you out of your comfort zone, because if everything's organized usually by school, you don't really have to think about how you're going to do it. But now it's like really thinking out of the box and really doing what you want to do, and being creative. And virtually there are so many opportunities to help people, and I'm not even going to go into listing them, but how you could mentor or how you might help elders, or there are lots of ways in your community or outside your community. So and I think you'd be surprised how much helping other people really helps to take your focus off of you and whatever you're struggling with sometimes. So I love the idea of trying to get creative, being out of the box with what you're going to do.
Just as far as it goes with college applications, I know that right now is probably a really stressful time, because maybe you had plans for something that you were going to do to help better yourself to prepare for college. But, I'll try to say this for the last time, it's unprecedented times. And, a lot of people who are looking at these applications are not looking so much at like what you did, but more so what it taught you. So, if you're able to reflect on your experience during COVID-19 in a way that demonstrates what you learned about yourself, or even what you learned about your worldview. I know even as an adult, I've been on this earth for almost 30 years, and I've learned things in the last couple months that I never thought were possible. And so having that level of reflection, if you can show that you're reflecting on your experiences, that's definitely a life skill that universities and colleges are interested in seeing in their students. So just being reflective during this time. And like Dr. Julie said, there's so many opportunities to help people right now. I encourage you guys to just keep following your passions and not listening to limiting beliefs. A limiting belief may tell yourself that, okay, well, it's not possible right now because we're in the middle of a pandemic. People have started creative projects. They've started new passions during this time. So really following your passions. And I think that will help with all the other issues that are being brought up during the pandemic as well.
Do you have any final tips for students, and what are you guys looking forward to this school year or just this year? And how are things going to be different, and are you excited about it?
I guess I'll go first. I am still excited about the school year just because I'm a teacher and I love to teach. It's definitely very different, and it's going to be very challenging. especially because a lot of my students that I teach have, more significant needs. I would say half the students I teach have autism, and they are nonverbal. So that means that they are not able to communicate via talking. Usually they'll have tablets or other ways that they can use to communicate, but obviously through a computer it's difficult. However, I think one of the things that I'm trying to see as a positive is it's teaching me and it's challenging me to try to think of new ways to interact with and engage with students. So I guess that could also be a tip for you. As frustrating as it is to learn virtually, this could really be an opportunity for growth. Like we were talking about, that growth mindset before is what I call it. Instead of seeing it as a negative, which is very valid, and you're allowed to feel upset about the current situation and why, if it's your senior year, learning virtually is not ideal. But try to look at it in a, oh, well, you know what? I'm probably going to have online classes in college. And you will, even if you go to a typical campus. I had a few as an undergrad before, this was years ago, before the pandemic. And it'll teach you how to, maybe be better at time management. Like we were saying, you can't just stay up till 12 o'clock midnight doing homework. People don't work like that during the regular workforce as well. So I hope that answers your question. I think I went a little bit off topic, but I feel like that those are kind of my biggest takeaways from learning virtually and starting the school year. And then someone had asked me in the chat about a music question, and I typed back an answer because you said you had to go. So I hope that answered it if you're still on here.
I'd like to add to your point. There were a lot of plans people had that didn't pan out. And, even for people who are in their 12th grade who wanted to graduate, you miss out on your prom, you miss out on for the Indian subcontinent, it's our farewell parties and all of these, you've missed out. So there are a lot of things that people are grieving and they're upset about. So that is there. Do not just shun that feeling, because it is a normal human grieving process. But adding to Lauren's point, maybe let's flip our script. Look at it as challenging, and also think about it. In 10 years, we have such an interesting story to tell people. We've lived through a pandemic. Think about like our grandparents, right? I'm sure everyone you turn to your grandparents, you ask, okay, how was independence, or what happened during the war or a recession? So many stories that we get to hear. Now we get to actually say this to the next generation. And I think that's exciting itself.
I think similar to what you just said, all of your feelings are okay right now, no matter what you're feeling. All of them are okay. Sometimes our feelings don't make sense. Sometimes we don't know what they are, but it's okay. And at the same time, sometimes it's not helpful to focus too much on your problems, because we can talk. Sometimes you might notice if you talk about something you're struggling with, sometimes you don't feel better afterwards. Sometimes it helps to talk about it, but sometimes if we just focus on what we're struggling with all the time, like if you're talking about the pandemic a lot, or you notice you're watching a lot of the news, or every time you chat with your friends, you're bringing up things that are stressful, that's not helpful for you. So I think setting boundaries with how much you're going to watch the news, how much you're going to talk about what's happening, and giving yourself a break to just totally be silly, watch something funny, just talk to your friends, just take your mind off of what's actually happening, because sometimes you do need a total break and just to enjoy life sometimes too.
And just to add on a bit with what you guys were saying, I noticed someone in the chat had asked about productivity during these times. I think the best advice, and even advice that I'm trying to follow right now as an adult, is to be fully connected when I am working, and then fully disconnected when I'm not working. The boundaries between school and home, or work and home, are very blurred right now. But if you do notice that you are disconnecting a bit while you are trying to study or you're trying to work, whether you're having a snack or you're going on your phone, or you're even thinking about what you're going to be doing after you're done your work, just notice that you're doing that, and then try to either visualize putting that task aside, or telling yourself that whatever I'm going to do now, I'll actually reward myself with that once I finish the immediate task in front of me. So I definitely advise trying to just have a clear boundary, like Dr. Julie said, as to where things end and finish. And then finally, having a mentality of gratitude. So instead of, approaching a task like, oh, I have to do this, instead of approaching it as a chore, instead reflecting on the fact that you have the opportunity to do it. So, we all have responsibilities and they can seem really daunting, but if you take a step back, a lot of the times your responsibilities are things that you chose for yourself because you knew they would better you. So, you may feel as though you have the responsibility to do online work, but the fact that you have that opportunity available to you is something to be very grateful for. So if you can approach it with that mindset, it can maybe make the task seem a little less daunting.
I just wanted to jump on and address one more question because I actually have to go right now, but I wanted to, and you all might have better advice than me, but someone had mentioned in the chat how to silence your inner critic, and I had gotten really great advice in undergrad in one of my music therapy courses from a professor, because we talked about this a lot, especially as any type of professional going into professional. I feel like we have this imposter syndrome, or you have this inner critic, kind of, you're your own worst critic, I truly believe. She had given me the advice that when you hear that internal monologue, that internal inner critic, that person in your mind that's saying, oh, why are you doing, you're just not good enough, this isn't good enough, why are you doing this? Really sit back and try to just observe what they're saying, almost like it's not you. Maybe it's some, amorphic, scary person that's like, not scary, but person that's outside of you, that's not you. And they're saying these things, and just listen and say, okay, and say, that's not really what I am, and that's not really who I am. Someone's saying this, but it's not really me. And once you separate that from really who you are, that inner voice isn't you, that critic, that person that's being negative, it's kind of easier to observe. Okay, I'm observing right now that this is work I've done, and it may not have been, maybe I feel I could do better. And you can kind of be a little bit more objective. So if you kind of separate the inner critic from yourself, you can be a little bit more objective and a little bit more, I think, kind and caring to yourself. I hope that made sense as I was speaking. I don't know if I was saying it correctly, but maybe Julie could, or Shabasi, you guys could clarify a little bit more what I'm trying to say. But I think kind of separating yourself from that voice is, you're not that person always. You're not that inner critic. And that can really help you with getting over that. Because I mean, as adults, I even struggle with that as well. And I'm sure everybody here does. So that's just my last little bit of advice.
I completely agree with you, because at the end of the day, like you said, we are our worst critic. And that's the sad part, because we are our own hero, So there is nobody else who's going to save us but ourselves. But we are so critical about our own achievements or our own failure. If we have a friend who fails in a subject, we are going to be much more empathetic with that person than with ourselves. And that itself is wrong. Especially in the Indian culture, we are taught to love others but not ourselves. So the concept of being selfish is not taught. It's said that this is an evil thing, or this is not something that's going to help you. So what happens is, as you're growing up, you feel like taking care of yourself, the self-care, that itself is a selfish action, and you avoid it because you don't want to be a bad person. But it's important to know that if you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. If you're good to yourself, you can be good to others, because what you are is what is going to be reflected. So excellent point by Lauren, that separate yourself from that critic and understand you are a flawed human just like the rest of us. And it's a growth, it's a process, it's a journey. Life is a journey at the end of the day. No one's going to die perfect. You're always going to grow. So accept that and enjoy this journey.
I love what was just mentioned. I wanted to add to the inner critic. We all have an inner critic. That's the part of us that's a perfectionist, that is not realistic, because there's no, perfect person out there. We do all have imperfections. One thing I think really helps is to imagine what you would say to a really good friend or a loved one who is suffering or who is having a hard time with something. Maybe they failed, maybe they are just feeling bad about themselves. How would you talk to them? Unfortunately, we would never talk to our friends the way we talk to ourselves, which is so sad. So we really want to look at how we're privately talking to ourselves and to change that. If it doesn't match up, to remind you of, well, how would I really treat a person I cared about right now? Probably not the way I'm talking to myself. And I just want to say that there is absolutely nothing selfish about taking care of yourself, prioritizing your needs. We learn in our families if it's okay to take care of ourselves or from people in our environment. And I just want to echo that sometimes we need to be our own parent and to take care of ourselves differently than the people in our lives take care of themselves.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to head out.
Thank you for attending. So another question we got was, how can you stay motivated and avoid burnout?
Incorporate your breaks. You know, a lot of times we think, okay, if I can be a machine and work 3-4 hours, I'm like the best person around. That's not right, because everyone is different. Your attention span is different. For some kids, 20 minutes is enough. For some, 40 minutes. And I know students who can go 2-3 hours. But it just depends on you and your personality. So incorporate those breaks, as well as make it fun. It doesn't have to be the same thing. I remember someone had pointed out that you can use visual aids. So if you're somebody who enjoys enjoys movies way more than, say, reading a book, try to find your syllabus or your study material in the form of a video material, so that it is a little more entertaining. And mix and match. Do not keep it monotonous. Do not keep it hard, all the subjects or all the difficult ones. Mix and match. For example, say you've learned math right now, then you mix it with English, or you mix it with music, or you mix it with maybe physics, you know, anything like that. So keep these things just so that you are a little more on the edge instead of getting burnt out.
Okay, so another question was, I tend to keep school, work, and home as separate as possible. Since almost everything is virtual, do you have any tips or advice to maintain this lifestyle?
I think it would be ideal to do that, but that might be hard to do now if you're doing work from home. So if your space is limited, try to think about how you can do work in the same space so that you start to, I mean, sometimes, again, this is different if your learning style, if you want to shake things up because your learning style is you want to be studying on a walk, or it really depends on everyone's learning style. But I do think typically it's really good to be associating one spot with where you're going to be doing work and not having distractions like a TV right in front of where you're doing work, or having, and I'm sure there are going to be interruptions, but trying to find a space that you start to associate with your workspace.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you please go ahead.
Some good advice that I've heard recently, just, I mean, this pertains to the pandemic, but also just, you know, having technology in general. Just because you are reachable, and just because someone has technology to reach you, to contact you, or to engage with you, if you've decided that you're done for the day, you don't have to respond. You know, if you want to set that boundary and it's your time to disconnect and relax, don't feel just because there is an opportunity for someone to contact you via email, text message, Instagram. If it's school related and you're done with the day, you don't even have to respond. You can always get to it when you're ready.
Also, when there's a lot of disruption from, say, family members, try to figure out their schedules as well. So, you know, when are they going to sleep, or when are they working, and try to sort of find a loophole somewhere in the day where you can do the tasks that are very important for you and you need a lot of concentration, you can sort of fit that into that. And maybe say you have an essay that you don't have to focus much, you can blend it with the other home environment and people distracting you, you can blend it in with that. So you have to constantly tailor your day according to the day you are in, because once everyone's at home, things are not really in your control. So have a little patience as well. Everyone's dealing with it. Have a little patience. I'm sure that we all can somehow get used to it. We're human beings, right? So we tend to get used to every sort of environment and situation. That's the best part about being humans. So eventually we will also get used to this.
This one might be more specific towards Dana, but do you have any tips for rising seniors dealing with college applications?
Yeah, for sure. So as we kind of touched on earlier, there is a lot of opportunities right now to be reflecting on how COVID-19 has sort of shaped your worldview and how that is going to help you with your college admissions. Because, you know, like I said earlier, colleges are not necessarily looking for what opportunities you've had as a high school student, because some students do receive more opportunities than others just based on the school that they go to or the resources that they have available to them. A lot of colleges and universities are more so concerned with how that has built your character and contributed to your sense of self and your being able to adapt. I think if you are able to adapt right now to learning online, you're going to have a lot of success in university, because university is much more independent than high school. If you feel as though you're not as successful as you hoped, or if you're reaching dead ends, do make sure that you reach out to whoever it is on your school staff that would be best to support you. I know in Canada, we have guidance counselors that are very supportive with this kind of thing. So if you wanted to schedule a meeting and, you know, ask any questions that you have for your college applications, I would definitely recommend that. And finally, just, you know, trying to get your letters of recommendation as soon as possible. Don't start leaving this until the last minute, because your teachers will also have a lot to do when the time comes to close up the year, and they probably will have a lot of reference letters to write as well. So just being a little bit proactive and starting a little bit earlier than you think you need to.
So our last question is, I am a parent of a teenage boy and teacher as well, and I'm looking for tips to help my son better cope. He was just diagnosed with major depressive disorder and will be starting freshman year at a brand new school. Thank you.
So just want to normalize that this is a lot of transition, and transitions have the potential to trigger more depression or more anxiety depending on whatever you're vulnerable to. So to be diagnosed starting a new school, starting high school during a pandemic, I mean, that's like transition over transition over transition. So it's totally understandable that to predict that this could be a difficult time, and to be as educated as possible on just what are the resources there for him to have a really good treatment team, whether that's a psychiatrist, psychologist, maybe the school counselor, for him to feel really supported, so that he has someone outside of the family to check in with. A lot of teens don't necessarily want to talk to parents about what's going on, and that's okay, but it's also very anxiety provoking for a parent to not know and to not be able to really feel like you're able to talk to your kid about what's happening. So for you to be as educated as possible about depression and the normal symptoms of, you know, what are the warning signs. So social isolation is right now difficult, because, you know, socializing isn't the same, but at the same time, it's so important for your son to have some social contact and to be able to be connecting in whatever way that is, and to make time for that, although he may or may not want to do that right now, which is a symptom. So I think being aware of warning signs, if he's spending a lot of time by himself, that's something you want to be aware of. A natural antidepressant is exercise, what we talked about, that getting endorphins going, just walking, even if he doesn't have the energy to exercise, taking a brisk walk can be so helpful for 10 minutes and doing that once a day. But again, a symptom is that you don't want to do that sometimes. So I think having a treatment team available and being, most importantly for yourself, I think really having support for yourself through this time, because it might be very stressful for the family or for you, and to be patient and compassionate with yourself while you're caring for your son is going to be important.
Because I'm not a psychologist, I have a little bit less to say on this topic, but I thought Dr. Julie's answer was really great. And I think, you know, just to emphasize that finding support for yourself is really crucial as well. You know, it sounds as though you've already helped a lot with your son, and I imagine that, you know, with that diagnosis, there must have already been an intervention, which is a great sign that you're doing great so far with supporting your son. I just wanted to tell a story of a friend of mine. He was reflecting on a depressive episode that he had in high school. And he said that what really helped him through that was finding something that he was passionate about as well. And his depressive episode had a lot to do with bullying at school. He said that he would go to school and he would have kids say terrible things to him, but because he was able to come home and find an online community that was really supportive for him through music, because music was his passion, he really attributes a lot to that. So, you know, again, like Dr. Julie said, it's so hard to really find the motivation to pursue your passions. But if there is something that he does seem very passionate about, maybe trying to support that. You know, if he likes to take photos, it's a great opportunity to go for a walk, take photos at the same time, get some exercise, finding some healthy habits for him that will make him feel like he's enjoying this time, may make it a little bit easier for him.
And just one thing, what I was talking about earlier about one of the best things for depression is noticing what helps you and doing more of it, especially when you don't have the motivation. So for him, if he notices taking a shower first thing in the morning helps him to get going, or eating regularly, getting enough sleep, not sleeping too much, because when you're depressed, you want to sleep more than normal. You know, just really trying to get the daily habits back on track. So just step by step. And again, you know, with the help of a therapist, not necessarily as a parent, are you going to be getting him to do all these things, but finding the balance of having that support to support you through that.
All right, I think that's all of the questions for today. Thank you so much. I know we ran 20 minutes over, but thank you so much for staying anyways and giving such great advice. I'm sure we all learned a lot from this, so much appreciated. And we'll end it here. Thank you to all of our attendees, and be sure to check out our website. It's plannerconsulting.org or Instagram at plannerconsulting. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys. It was great meeting you.